Welcome. You're listening to Dupie Deep with Dr. Nikki. This is the place where witty, irreverent, opinionated perspective meets serious, fact-based discussion. Featuring our host, Dr. Nikki Coleman, and her co-host, Tomas Bell. You can also join in the discussion during our live tapings by following us on Spreaker.com. Now, the doctor is in. It's time to get Dupie Deep. And now, Dr. Nikki Coleman.
Hello, everyone. How are you this fine Friday? Welcome to our premiere episode of Dupie Deep with Dr. Nikki. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Are you excited, Tomas?
I stay excited.
That's true. So what we want to do today is just give you a glimpse into what this whole thing is about. I'm sure when you saw the title Dupie Deep with Dr. Nikki, you were probably wondering, what in the world does that mean? This is a made-up word, Dupie. I don't even know if that's correctly how it's spelled. Is it spelled phonetically? What does it mean? And so what we want to do today is just kind of give you a general orientation, a welcome to what Dupie Deep will be all about. Today is the first of a 4-part summer series. So we'll be here every Friday from now through July 14th for about 30 minutes, 11:30 Central Standard Time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And then, of course, you should be able to find archives to the episode on my Facebook page, in Dr. Nikki Knows on Tomas Entertainment's Facebook page, on Twitter. We're going to have a wide world. Why can't I get the words together? A wide worldwide web presence is what I'm trying to say. So a little bit about who I am and about the show. So my name is Dr. Nikki Coleman, and I'm a PhD doctor, not an MD doctor. A little secret that my daughter hasn't quite figured out yet at the age of 5, and I'm happy about that. But I have a PhD and not an MD, and my PhD is in counseling psychology. That means that I'm a little bit of this and I'm a little bit of that. That I'm a scholar because my primary profession is as an academic, but I'm also a trained and licensed psychologist. So I have a therapist hat on as well. And then through that training, beyond doing therapy, I also do lots of training, workshops, topics on a variety of different areas. And then most recently, I have entered the world of blogging, which is helping me maintain my sanity as a single working mom. So those are all of the different facets about who I am and all of the different lenses of how I see things and how I see the world that we're going to hopefully use as a launch pad, as a place to start conversations and speak from during our time together in Dupie Deeps. So why the show? So Dupie Deeps, if you take a second and look at our splash page on Spreaker, you will see that we've defined a Dupie Deep as a noun, a profound and complex experience that it's personal and intimate, sharing of personal and intimate information. Now, while I use the term Dupie Deep regularly, I have to give credit where credit is due. Again, I'm an academic, so I have to cite the source. And actually, I first heard the term from my good friend Tomas here. And so we kind of have used this term in the past to refer to anytime we get into a space of talking about our kind of most intimate, closely held feelings, ideas, opinions about things. And so essentially when we say Dupie Deep, we mean going beyond the surface. And I thought that would be an appropriate name for the podcast because that is really the ultimate goal. I am a fan of pop culture. I'm an educated woman, so I try to stay informed about politics, about society, about the major things going on in the world. And what I found in the past several years is that I just had this increasingly irritation and frustration with the level of surface and superficiality that seems to become commonplace for how we talk about the really important issues. And so rather than continuing to kind of contribute to that pattern and that cycle, I wanted to try to do something to engage folks differently. So moving beyond rhetoric and memes, sound bites, hashtags, people's 140 character opinions via Twitter, moving beyond news as entertainment, and hopefully moving to beyond the ignorance as acceptable, is the whole kind of purpose of Dupie Deep. And I want to eventually get to a place where we can have real conversations about some of the big topics, right? So now we live in a space where I think mostly everybody, so my mom, shout out to my mama. My mom is 72 years old and my mom has a Facebook page, right? So she's also on Instagram, doesn't use that as much as well, but she's a Facebooker for sure. She has the app on her phone. She has an iPhone. She has a Apple TV. She has a Roku box. She's tuned in. She's tapped in. And so I use that as an example to say we're pretty much a very connected world. We have access to lots of information constantly, but not all the information is accurate. Not all the information is helpful. And certainly not all the information is reflective of the real complexity of most of the big issues that we're talking about these days. And I'm talking about things like gun violence, talking about civil rights for a variety of different communities, bigotry, racism, xenophobia, reproductive justice, police violence, right? So these are things that are probably in some way, shape, or form in everybody's social media feed. They're talked about a bit flippantly and without a lot of reflection on most of our popular news outlets. But there aren't many spaces in which we can kind of go beyond the rhetoric and the surface and fully explore and have conversation. And so that's what we want to do with this space here. Tomas, were you want to say something?
Sorry.
No.
No, I do. I'm sorry. I just muted myself because, I stay thirsty, so I had to take a sip of water there for a second. But listen, I'm excited about the show, but I'm also concerned that the world may not be ready to go Dupie Deep, and that's why I'm really excited that this show is being done by a person who understands how the mind works, because it just seems to me, I actually am no longer on Facebook. I got off Facebook for a lot of the same things that you stated.
Mm-hmm.
Such vitriol in my timeline, and it came from people in places that I least expected it to come from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Highly intelligent people, who
Mm-hmm.
were spouting such vitriol, and it didn't make a difference if it was right or wrong. It's how I feel, therefore it equals truth. And
Right.
while I'm all about let's live in your truth and I acknowledge your truth, I can't begin my day with bitterness, because then I
Right.
walk into New York City, and that's not the place you want to be.
No.
With bitterness in your
No.
city, So
So yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that piece up because there's a couple of things that I want to talk about specific to this topic. And I think we'll also kind of set a roadmap for how we will use the podcast in the future. And one is that I kind of just want to give people some information. So you just mentioned two things, right? That actually there's a lot of psychological research that exists about those two things. And one of them is the piece that you talked about in terms of people just being vehement and ugly and being able to like spout off their opinion without hesitation in your timeline, right? And so there's a theory around that, and that's called the online disinhibition effect, right? And it's this idea that people really do feel a different level of bravery when they're behind a computer screen. It means that people actually are more empowered and are supremely more willing and confident to say things via a chat room, via a comment or a response, even if we're talking about gaming, right? And so we're talking over the headset, that if I can't see you, if there is some sort of technology as a medium in between me and the real person, just that limited amount of disconnect allows people to be a little bit more, let me say, buck, if you will, in what they say. And
What's the name
yeah,
of this theory again?
so it's called the online disinhibition effect.
Okay, so let me just break it down. The online disinhibition effect equals trolls.
Pretty
Easy way of saying trolls,
much.
right?
So let's break it down, right?
I'm not
Let
going
me
to call you a
elevate.
troll. I'm going to call you an online disinhibition effector, right?
So let's talk about the other part, right? So to really round this out. And that is, so the online disinhibition effect is the, how do we say it? It is the context. It's the permission that people have to engage in trolling. But the trolling comes from people's cognitive biases. Okay. And so the reality is we're all walking around with these different cognitive biases, and there's lots of them. Generally speaking, when we talk about a cognitive bias, we're talking about a systematic pattern of thinking whereby you believe that the starting point is true, and then you base every other judgment in your perception from that starting point. Doesn't matter if the starting point is true or not. You believe it's true, and then everything else you see, do, perceive gets built upon that. So you take people's cognitive biases, you add the online disinhibition effect, and then you get trolls. So it's like a 1 + 1 = troll sort of situation.
I love it. 1 + 1 = troll. And I laugh about it because, I've been trolled on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Twitter trolls can be really, really vicious. But the thing I found that was most interesting about this person trolling me was, and I don't want to sound bougie, but I will. It's okay. It's the fact that
Don't want to sound and not being are two different things. See?
and there it is. This person didn't even understand what I was saying. They were
Mm-hmm.
responding to whatever they were doing over there, wherever they happened to be in the world. Had
Right.
nothing to do with what I was saying. And so I didn't get upset. I didn't get angry. I just, did me and the way I do me, and that's offer this person, an access library card to do some research because I
Right.
don't know what you're talking about. Like, you really need to research something. And
So
what I find out
that sounds
a
like,
lot of that.
yeah. So apparently my Alexa thought I was talking to her. I apologize, listener.
Hey Alexa, how you doing?
Don't engage her. Do not engage her. I'm glad she just was reporting the weather because it could have been worse. But seriously, and so that example, a lot. So one of there's two major cognitive biases that I wanted to talk about that I think are really a lot of what we're seeing in social media. And then when there are moments, and we've also started to see this more and more often, right? Where now people are videotaping folks out in the street spewing their hatred and bigotry and biases, and now we're seeing more incidents of that happening out in public, right? So we're not just talking about people's online behavior. What I'm really talking about is I think we're now living in a political climate, in an evolution of our devolution as a society, in which kind of being hateful towards one another is just a more acceptable way